Hey everybody, thanks for watching, thanks for coming by, and in this episode, we're going to be taking a look at replacing a background for an image. So welcome back, and in the last episode, or in the last tutorial, I showed you how to clip somebody or cut somebody out from their background. So you're isolating your subject, using the path tool, and using your alpha channels, and we've cut the person out, and we cut the person or your subject out, the subject out. As you can see, my mask is nice and ready, and I can put in a new background. So I'm just going to take a simple image, and it's just an image I found on Unsplash. And what you want to do and what you're looking for is something that fits in the focal range and in the kind of camera position that's similar to the subject. And this one I found it's fairly similar. It doesn't have to be exact, but what we're going to do is we're going to just place it as the background. So we're going to, and well, in this image I'm just going to give some attribution. It's Linda Zoo. I found this on Unsplash. And so I'm just copying and pasting it in. The image itself is a lower resolution, but I'm just going to scale that up for this example. And we can move it around. And as you can see that as I've placed it in, it's just not perfect. It's just it just stands out. The lighting is different, like the colors are different and that kind of stuff. So what I want to do is I want to quickly adjust the background with a little bit of a curve just to get the contrast and the brightness up so that it just slowly starts to match. So it slowly starts to match the kind of like the tones of, not even the tones, the contrast of the main image. And you're going to notice that the color is a little off. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly use my adjustment layers, and I'm going to shift the color as well. Use my hue saturation, and I'm going to shift the hue globally. So I'm just going to warm it up. Maybe just warm that up. Use my color balance. Go into the shadows, and I'm just going to put the shadows a little warmer. Everything's just going to follow the tones, sort of the subject. So as you can see, we're going from this really kind of like matte, flat blue kind of background to a little more vibrant, a lot more contrasted background image. And from that point, now we gotta look at the subject and see how that affects how we can shift the subject's color. We want to blend it fairly as close as possible to the background using color and contrast. So I'm going to do another hue saturation just for my subject, and how I'm doing that is I'm going to create that hue saturation adjustment layer, and then I'm going to hold Option or Alt, and I'm going to move my cursor to in between the two layers, just where the line is, and you'll see that the cursor changes. And when you click it, it will shift it over, draw this arrow here, it'll drop this arrow here, and what that's signifying is that it's only affecting the layer it's associated to, or the layer below it. And now I can start shifting around the color. So if I go into the reds, I shift it probably a little more yellow, and then darken that up just a little more because we don't want it too kind of crazy. I'm going to create a new curved layer, do the same thing, associate it with the layer below, and we're going to really just create that contrast. Because the background has quite a bit of contrast. We just kind of want to try to match that. Maybe turn that into luminosity so that we don't oversaturate the subject. That's not necessarily looking that great. And what we're going to do from this point, what we need to do is we need to apply some kind of background blur to it. So if we go to filter, we go into our blur gallery, and let's go with an iris blur. Maybe a field blur will be better. Yeah. So then we're going to bring that down. Let's move this point there and increase the values. So we have to remember that our blur for the background, the out of focus area for the background, should be kind of similar to our original background. That's close. I think that's good. Okay. It's just going to blur that background. What we'll probably want to do, because if we take out our background and we put in our original background is fairly light and fairly blurred. So if we do that, go back and forth, we can kind of see how similar it can be, or how similar the blur is. Raise them up, put those colors back in. It's slowly starting to match, and this is where you're going to start to take your time. We see that there's highlight on the highlight roll-off kind of on the side of his face and on his arms. So we need to kind of simulate that. So with that, I can add a new layer. Let's use a gradient, circular gradient. We're going to go with a white. So if we switch that to white, flip that so that our white and the gradient itself is a foreground to translucent, and we can just kind of add a gradient that will just kind of simulate kind of like the lightness of what's happening. Nothing too crazy. I don't want it too overdone as well. You can add multiple of them. You don't want to add so many. Just there. That's not bad. And we're going to use our overlay. And just kind of go up and over. And then maybe what we're going to do is add another one. Another gradient, and that just kind of like appears from the back. Just a little bit. Just so that we have something. That's a little hard. Go back to the overlay. Will that work? Maybe we're gonna brush some of that out. We're just gonna mask it. Soften that up. %, so we don't want it completely kind of there. It's not too bad. It's still standing out quite a bit. So I'm just going to go in, make another adjustment layer, hue saturation, associate it with that layer, tone down the saturation a little bit. Maybe not. Again, it's a lot of it is trial and error when you break down, when you go and do it. And what you can see is that I still have kind of like a white halo around his head, around the head, around some of the details. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my mask layer and I'm going to add a contrast curve to it, just to eat up some of that darker area. And so that's less of a white glow. And slowly getting there. We could obviously fix that manually if we just kind of start looking at our mask. With the mask layer selected, I can slowly at 10%, so we want 10% opacity on the brush, and just start clicking in. I want a very small brush to do that. Because all we're going to do, maybe increase that to 30. And all we want to do is make it, just disappear that halo. Just make that halo disappear. And this is where kind of your eye will be imperative in terms of trying to make it blend in a little more. See how slow but how effective this is becoming. I'm just clicking around this edge just so that I don't do too much at once. I can bring some back. Oops. And there. That's a little better. And we could do that for the rest of the kind of like the edging. I'm going to desaturate the background too, because it's a little too saturated. That's not bad. That's not bad. Maybe a little more saturation in that. So now the tones are kind of starting to look similar. You know, it's starting to blend in a little better, which isn't bad, but it's not perfect. So the best way to do that, or to start to resolve some of the color issue, is by creating a new layer. What I'm going to do is I'm going to sample, I'm going to use an eyedropper point sample, all layers. I'm going to sample some of this color, like some of the warmer color around here. Maybe on the lighter side, maybe that one. Somewhere, it's like a warm gray, like in that brick, something like that. And I want to use my brush, and I'm just going to brush in some of this color. And it's going to look a little weird right now because I'm just kind of doing it without any masking, and just looks like a gray kind of blob. If I associate it with this layer, it just utilizes that. And then I'm just going to change the blending mode to overlay. I think overlay will do. And just add some of that color in. Because we want to start to incorporate some of that background color into this. And you can start to see now, he's starting to blend right back in. I think adding another curve will help, just to get it to a point where it's just slowly just blending it a little more. Change the blending mode to luminosity. It's a little overdone. Let's go with a 50%. Might be better. And let's add some more color back to this. Maybe some of the blue tone in there on this side. All right, change that back to an overlay, soft overlay, change it to an overlay, make kind of 30%. Okay, so the color you can see is slowly getting there from that side. We may or may not want to do more. With that color, because we know that this area here is a lot deeper. So even if we use another adjustment layer, and we're going to use exposure, and we're going to drop down the exposure. We're going to apply it there, and we're going to fill the mask with black, and we're just going to brush in at 20% something a little darker on his edge. And this could or couldn't work. Sometimes you just have to explore these ideas. Take it away. And luminosity, right? Blending mode, luminosity. Maybe put it down to 80%. That's not too bad. Okay, so now the final touch for this is going to be to collapse all the layers together, except for the except for like that last original background. And we're going to do a Command, Option, or Alt, Shift, or E, or Control, Option, Shift, E. It takes a copy of all the layers and makes it into one layer. And I'm going to go back to my blur gallery, and I will do a iris blur. Let's actually, maybe we'll do a field blur again. So then we put the point, and then we put the point here, put another point, we're gonna add another point on his nose. There we go. Do a zero blur, so it's nice and sharp. I'm gonna add the field blur another point, and what you can do is add multiple points so that you can pull the background, blend the background in and out with different amounts of blur. Just needs to add a new one. There we go. Give it a little second here. There we go. Blur that up. You can just play with the position. It's a little much there, a little much there. Just gonna blur that, hit OK. I'm just gonna process. Here we go. And now we've softened up some of the areas of kind of like, you know, the arms, just to try to blend it in with the background. And there, that's how you change the background, or that's how you put somebody in a different background. Very simple. The longer you take, the more time you take with it, you're going to be able to get a better result. In these cases, you're just going to take your time and just look at it, re-look at it, and just analyze to see how this is going to, you know, work together. And that's it. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. I hope you learned something about replacing backgrounds, and I hope you can incorporate this technique into your daily workflow. So as always, thanks for watching. Hopefully you guys have subscribed. If not, please hit that subscribe button. If you have any questions, leave it in the comments below, and I will get to as much of them as I can. And that's all. So stay safe and keep creating.